Welcome to WebEx. Press 1. This webinar is being recorded and summarized.
And closes.
You can slide it over.
Oh, I don't.
Thank you.
Yep.
Harry, I will assume. Good. We're hot. Am I live? Okay, you can hear me now? Thank you so much. Okay. The hour of 10 a.m. having arrived, I call to order the Thursday, February 12th, 2026 regular agenda meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. My name is John Tuma. I've been asked by Chair Sieben to preside over today's meeting. First order of business, of course, is to call the roll. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
And obviously, I am already here, as I've indicated, and we have a quorum, and we can do business. First item, Ms. Marcus. We have the reconsideration of the Greater Minnesota Gas Rate Case Order. Give it its formal introduction, please.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Item number 1 involves Greater Minnesota Gas and docket E022GR24350 in the matter of the application of Greater Minnesota Gas for authority to increase rates for natural gas utility service in Minnesota. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission reopen, reconsider, or clarify its November 26, 2025 findings of fact, conclusions, and/or staff and parties are available for questions.
Mr. Swanson, Ms. Anderson, you can come up. I don't know if there's any questions. I do not have any questions, but I'm seeing Commissioner Hom indicating he may have some. So do the traditional introduce yourself for the record, state who you're representing, and we will proceed from there. You can come up too. I don't know if there's questions for you, but Mr. Cherney, you got paid to be here. Show on up. We'll so note.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Swanson from the law firm of Winthrop and Weinstein on behalf of Greater Minnesota Gas, and with me is Christine Anderson of the company.
Arnold, if you want to introduce yourself, let's go ahead so we all know you're here.
Catherine Arnold, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. With me online is Sachin Shah, and here in the Commission room is Dr. Lee.
And Mr. Cherney.
Joey Cherney, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General Residential Utilities Division.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Tuma. So, Commissioners, that Ms. Marcus informed me that Greater Minnesota Gas filed updated the depreciation information we discussed during the other dockets. So I just want to make sure that what is the potential consequence from that filing. So I need to ask the department about it.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Anderson. I don't know.
I think it was directed to Ms. Arnold.
I don't know if I just was making sure it was filed, I guess. I thought he asked you that first.
No, I think Ms. Marcus informed me that she checked it and it was filed.
It was filed, okay. That was what I misheard. Ms. Arnold.
Commissioner Hom, Chair Tuma, I am aware that there have been filings in other dockets. I have been monitoring this one. If there's a specific question, I would appreciate some additional guidance because nothing has been filed in this docket, so I didn't have specific comments on anything else prepared.
Ms. Marcus.
There was a filing on February 6th related to depreciation. GMG filed it in both this docket and in the depreciation docket. It was a supplemental that was requested by the commissioners in a prior agenda meeting.
I don't know if Mr. Shaw or...
Chair Tuma, I'm still not sure what the question is.
I don't know what the question is either. Commissioner Hom, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Tuma. During the depreciation docket, the company informed the commission that they had a mistake in the prior depreciation filing. They missed incorporating kayak payment in their depreciation. So during that depreciation docket, company agreed to file updated the rate base potentially for these dockets because we had still open dockets in the recount period. So I was wondering whether the department had a chance to evaluate it and what is the potential impact to rate base, and should we incorporate that into the final rate or not?
Certainly, just I need 1 second to confer with Dr. Lee.
Yep. Ms. Arnold.
The department does not believe that this information should have an impact on the proceedings here. We are making an upcoming filing the depreciation docket and intend to address that there.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Tuma. I disagree with that because that has a direct impact to the rate base. It might be a very small number, so I can ask a company about potential impact of final rates. So,
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Tuma, Commissioner Hom.
Introduce yourself for the record, even though you were
Christine Anderson on behalf of Greater Minnesota Gas, as Mr. Swanson had indicated. Just to clarify, with respect to the kayak issue, the kayak has always been correct in the rate case. The error had been in the historic depreciation dockets, that for some reason in the historic depreciation dockets, somebody that was way before anybody exists still at the company hadn't included the kayak, hadn't reflected that in the depreciation dockets. So when Ms. Berkey was preparing our financials for the rate case, she noticed that because things weren't tying out. So at that time, she went in and corrected the reflection of the kayak in the depreciation docket, and then that we addressed in depreciation. So I apologize if I wasn't clear about that in the depreciation docket. It has always been reflected correctly in the rate case, so that kayak issue wouldn't have an impact on the rate base. The filing that I made in both dockets that I updated after our depreciation hearing was Commissioner Hom, you'd inquired as to whether we had updated the numbers to reflect the small changes that we requested in the depreciation docket, which was a 1-year change to how vehicles were treated, and then there was a shift in how AMR, automatic meter reading equipment, was treated. And we had not reflected that in the numbers. So after we had actual year-end numbers for 2025, I did go ahead and make a filing that reflected that. The change in the depreciation numbers was less than $3,000 on the depreciation end, and the change to the rate base, I don't recall immediately off the top of my head, but I think it was about 0.02% or something. So we would agree with the department that the change that was reflected in that recent filing isn't substantial enough to have an impact on this matter, and the only request for reconsideration was related to the sales forecasting. But just to be clear, the kayak has always been reflected correctly in the rate case.
Thank you, Chair Tuma. Thank you. That's why I want department to verify that information. I trust company, but we always need to verify what company provide. Did department verify that information?
Ms. Arnold.
Chair Tuma, Commissioner Hum, the department completely agrees, and I think, something we tried to emphasize in our briefing throughout this case was the difficulty in getting timely and accurate information from GMG.
My question is, has the department reviewed and verified?
Chair Tuma, Commissioner Hum, my understanding is that the process is underway and that the department's conclusions will be reflected in the upcoming filing.
So in other words, you didn't do it in this docket. That's why we purposely brought the information in this docket. Since that docket is still open, we want to make sure that ratepayers are not paying any extra cents if they don't have to pay. And that's why I was hoping that information is properly reflected in this docket, since it's a still open recount period. So in other words, department didn't do verification yet on this docket. So we have to take what company claimed today.
Ms. Arnold.
Chair Tuma, Commissioner Hum, the record was closed in the rate case. There was the petition for reconsideration on the issues that were in the petition, and the department had not prepared for reconsideration on additional issues that had not been petitioned.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I have none. I'm seeing no further questions, so let's go to discussions. Obviously, this would be a motion to reconsider. I think it'd be Partridge, Tuma, or Sullivan would have to make that motion. So do we have a motion to reconsider?
Sure, I'm happy to make a motion. I mean, I've reviewed the record, reviewed the dockets, and I mean, I still stand where I sat a couple weeks ago. So I would deny GMG's request for reconsideration. So that's move decision option 2.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item number 2 has been pulled at the request of the petitioners, and hopefully all that has been taken care of. Sounds like there was some family emergency that occurred, so we wish the best for Mr. Dobson on that. That moves us to item number 3. It is a petition to amend the Big Bend wind permit for a large energy conversion system site permit in the counties of Cottonwood and my favorite word, Watonwan counties. Mr. Davis, looks like you're going to do the first time, I think, introduction, even though you're one of our veterans, the first introduction of a official docket. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Chair Tuma, Commissioners. This is a docket in regard to Apex Clean Energy Holdings, LLC, doing business as Big Bend Wind, LLC, docket number IP-7013/WS-19-619 in the matter of the application of Big Bend Wind, LLC for a large wind energy conversion system site permit for the up to 300 megawatt Big Bend Wind project in Cottonwood and Watonwan counties. The question for the commission to consider: should the commission approve Big Bend Wind LLC's petition to amend the site permit for the Big Bend Wind project? Staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We'll take a little extra time with introductions. I know that we have a non-participant landowner in the area online, and so I want to make sure he is comfortable with where we're going, but we'll start off with just introductions, and we'll go through the process I intend to use today for this hearing. So we'll start off with Ms. Brusman and your assistants.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Tuma. Steve Brusman, Robertson and Byron, appearing on behalf of Big Bend Wind, LLC.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bree Anderson from Apex Clean Energy, or Big Bend Wind.
Mr. Hutchinson, I see a camera there. I don't know if you're available. If you could turn yourself off mute. I want you just to introduce yourself for the record, and I'll give you an explanation of kind of how I intend to run things out today at today's hearing. So, Mr. Hutchinson, go ahead and make an introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. Brad Hutchison, like you said, I'm just a resident right in the middle of the area where this project is being proposed. Sorry for the camera. My camera doesn't seem to be working, but audio is fine with me.
That's okay. It's a very nice house, so I don't mind the picture. But unfortunately, you got to look at me. So,
Yeah, well, that's what I told Mary. I'm not that much to look at anyway, so this is good.
Well, that's two of us. Let's just so you know, I want to give you an understanding what you're in front of. Okay, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission has actually been around for quite a long time, Mr. Hutchinson. It's been in existence since 1871. So 150 years of our 250 years of our nation, we have been in existence. We've been asked by the legislature early on to economically regulate railroads and warehouses, or grain elevators, if you would have known them as. Later, we've been asked to regulate phone companies, gas companies, and power companies, natural monopolies. And so because we are asked to regulate them over the years, the legislature has given us extra duties, and one of those extra duties in the area of power plants is to cite major power plants like the one that's going to be built in your area and around you, a 311 megawatt capacity power plant is well within our jurisdiction to regulate. The legislature has determined that it is appropriate for the state to regulate those, and we supersede any county or local ordinances in the siting of those large energy facilities, though we are required by law to take into consideration what the counties and the local units of government have in place when we make our determination of whether to site a particular large power plant. We also cite those big, large, ugly power lines that are in and around your communities. We do that too. And so we are responsible for that siting. We are a quasi-judicial agency created by the legislature to determine whether the permit that is being suggested by Ms. Brusman's client here is appropriate under our state law. If it is appropriate, we're obligated by state law to approve it. But we also have the obligation to make sure we're mitigating any environmental and human impacts in and around the sites, and that's our statutory obligation. And so we're here on an amendment to a permit we've already issued, and so we have to consider it on the record. And so all the commissioners, there's 4 of us here today, have read the record, are familiar with your comments and the comments of the applicant in this process, and generally familiar with the record. So even though we're quasi-judicial, we don't have opening statements. We look more like a township board or a county board meeting. We will take questions, we'll ask questions, and we'll go through a process. I will ask several questions of Ms. Brusman and Mr. Davis to make sure I fully understand the record, but I want to assure you, you will get the last say because we want to make sure landowners who are non-participants who have to put up with these large facilities around us are taken care of. We can't take care of all issues, but we can certainly listen and concern. So I want you to be reassured as we are having conversations and asking questions, you will get the last say. As I ask questions, none of my fellow commissioners are aware what I'm going to ask. We are subject to the open meeting law. They know nothing what I'm thinking about this docket. I know nothing of what they're thinking about after reading the record. Everything we do and deliberations we do have to be in public, and so that's what we will do. Once the questions are done and you have a chance to give us a statement or, put anything in the record at this stage that you would like to say, we will go to a time of deliberation where we will deliberate what's in front of us and we'll make a decision on the record about what has been requested by the permittee here to amend their permit. And so that will be at the end. So I want you just to be assured you'll have an opportunity to have a say, but before we start with, we just don't feel a need for this small of a question to have opening statements. And so, if we're citing a major power line for 100 miles, I probably would have opening statements, but this is pretty straightforward. So you'll have a chance to say, but I want to make sure before we start, Mr. Hutchinson, you understand what's going on and that you're comfortable with the process that I have set. Mr. Hutchinson. If you're talking, you're on mute. There you go.
Just change it. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Ms. Brusman, we have, I'm going to focus on Cottonwood County, obviously, because the concern has been raised by a resident of Cottonwood County. I'm assuming it's going to be the same for Watonwan County, but have you had a chance to talk with Cottonwood County about your amendment changes and any concerns that they have raised to you regarding the changes to the amendment or amended permit?
Commissioner Tuma, Apex has been in coordination with Cottonwood County. There are a number of permits that will be required related to access roads and use of roads, and those conversations are ongoing. They've been productive, but they've raised no concerns as to the amendment requests.
And I know when we sent you out when we permitted this, you admit these are big machines, the biggest we're going to build in Minnesota so far, and so there were some concerns as we were doing the permit to make sure the setbacks were met, that property rights were taken care of. We gave you some exceptions to the property rights, but asked you to go out and work with those landowners that have had property rights concerns with the size of these turbines. Have you had those conversations, and how have they gone?
Chair Tuma and Commissioners, we have had continued discussions with our landowners in preparation to bring this project to construction, but also related to the 2022 decision, and specifically on some of the setback waivers that the Commission granted. I believe you granted 3 or 4, and we've obtained all but 1. And where that wind access buffer crosses that non-participating property, it's just the narrow driveway to a farmstead.
And I recall that there was a driveway crossing there. And you've had conversations, but as of now, that was a wind right violation and not a setback issue, right? And for the properties involved in the project, I think all of them are within Cottonwood County's setback requirements if you were to build it under Cottonwood County's permitting requirements, is my guess, given the size of the wind rights. Is that a fact, Ms. Brusman?
Commissioner Tuma, yes, we had considered the local ordinance requirements where they applied, and again, the turbine amendment request before you doesn't move any of the turbine locations, drops 2 of them, but they're all in the same location as were originally permitted and went through that process, again, with no pushback or concern from the county.
Have you been in contact with Midway Township? My understanding, Mr. Hutchinson's kind of right in the middle of it, and this is a permit area where the permits that are affecting his property are in Midway Township.
Chair Tuma, yes, we have, and as part of this proceeding, we are starting construction on our project substation, which is in Midway Township. We had our pre-construction meeting to start construction of just that facility last week, and so we've been coordinating extensively with Midway Township.
And has Midway Township officials indicated any concerns with regards to setbacks or any issues in regards to property noise issues to you?
Chair Tuma, no, they have not.
I took a deep dive into the sound study amendment. It's a report of prior modeling that was done, and then using the additional new turbine, which you're suggesting in this amendment, the GE turbines that were here. And I noticed that they do have a little bit more loud noise level than maybe the other permit being, or the other turbine being suggested, but again, this is the modeling that's being done. And I looked at, I think it was Paxwood Acoustics and Mr. Duncan, he's been doing it for a while, so I'm too worried. He's been a couple of decades, and I've seen his work in other places, but we're using the ISO 9613-2 modeling tool to model the potential impacts, and that he did use the 0.5 ground factor, which is kind of in the middle between porous to hard, We do have add 2 decibels. That was my understanding to what the manufacturer tells you the turbine's going to make. We add 2 decibels to the modeling. I saw that. We use 13 feet or 4 meters for the height of the receptor, though even most of us are walking around our yard are not at 13 feet. I'm probably a little closer than you are to 13 feet, but I am not at 13 feet, but we use that because we know these turbines are high and we want to model any impacts that they could have on the property at a more conservative in the property owner's benefit. And then we also look at, other factors that are involved, but when we do modeling, we do it significantly less for non-participants. 45 is where we set a goal for you to set your turbines at less than 45 in the modeling, even though our standard is 50 decibels at nighttime. And so just confirm with me, that's the modeling that you used and that Mr. Duncan used on this particular report that's in front of us now for this permit amendment. Is that correct?
Chair Tuma, that's correct.
And Mr. Davis, this is not your first sound study that you've looked at. I just want to confirm with you, you've looked at the sound study and it's using the standards we expect for a conservative view of a model going forward. Is that correct?
Chair Tuma, that's correct.
And our sighting guidelines, again, the 45 is 5 decibels less than what we would expect because we know, and I think Mr. Hutchinson laid it out, the models with low volume type activities like turbines, the modeling isn't always perfect. We find out on the field that sometimes the results differ from the modeling, and so we try to have those conservative elements built into the model. Is that your understanding, Mr. Davis?
Chair Tuma, that's correct as well.
And we do that, Ms. Rusman, because we don't want your client to come back to us and find out that they have exceeded the noise standard with particularly a non-participant at the 50 dBA, because that will cause problems for you because we'll probably ask you to do some mitigations, which could be turning it off in the evening, okay? And that is costly to your client. Is that your understanding?
Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. Big Bend Wind is here for a long-term opportunity and wants a long-term relationship with the community, and certainly the conservative assumptions built into the noise modeling is reflective of that, to make sure that we're below the noise standards and hopefully then to reduce the potential for complaints or issues in the future.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sullivan.
Just a clarifying question. So when we say that Big Bend is modeled at I think Mr. Hutchinson pointed out that the criteria was should have been 47 or less than, but in the modeling it says less than 47. So that is still under the statewide standard of 50, right? So like there is a mismatch there. That is, he's identified a mismatch, but it is still under what we require from a statewide standard approach. Is that, do I have it right?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Sullivan, what Mr. Hutchinson pointed out was we pulled forward an error in the filing itself and referenced the 2019 guidance, which had a less than 45 or less than 47 dBA.
Yep.
As EIP staff and Mr. Davis pointed out, it was updated in 2022 to be 47 or 45 for participants and non-participants. Again, both of those are under 50, which is the state standard. Both of them are conservative, and the modeling was done correctly following the most recent guidance. And so you will see some reflected residents at 47, some at 45, and I think Mr. Hutchinson was pointing out that the prior guidance was less than each of those numbers. But either way, both are less than the state standard of 50.
Okay, thanks.
It is important to know that the state standard is not law. It's in a rule, but the rule was specifically created because the legislature asked the PUCA to set a noise standard. They did set the standard at 50, which is pretty conservative when you look at noise standards across the country, for evening, okay? And because wind turbines, unlike manufacturing facilities, are still running in the evening. And so you have all industrial pieces of equipment out there. Wind turbines are subject to the tightest noise standards in the state when it comes to industrial equipment that's out If someone's during the day is at 60, they're fine, you know. And so if we were to turn it off, it would probably be turned off in the evening. But again, it is a standard the PCA was obligated to create by the legislature so that local units of government and state agencies like ours could then say, yeah, we want to apply that standard because it makes sense. But now if you had a participant who came here and was at 52 dBA, I would look at you and say, have you gone and talked to them, and is that what they want? Because that farmer who may own that property may live there and say, hey, I want to listen to 52 dBA. That's the sound of money to me, okay? And I want to sit out in my backyard and smoke my stogies and drink my bourbon and, you know, cook a steak with a lot of fat on it in my backyard and listen to that sound. Because I want that turbine to be where I asked it to be because I want it on my property line and not in the middle of my field. And so I'm okay with listening to 52. And we could do that. I mean, you could come and say, yes, we have this waiver from this landowner who's a participant, and more than likely we would say, okay, it's his backyard, go ahead, listen to 52. Is that your understanding, Ms. Brusman?
Chair Tuma, actually, my understanding is a little bit different. The state noise standard applies to all noise sources and sort of all areas, all receptors, if you will. And so that's how we've applied the citing for this project, so that all area receptors, participants or non, would be less than the 50 dBA noise standard. We know that that standard is a complaint-based enforcement mechanism. We, as you've just articulated, would expect that a participant is less likely to raise a complaint about noise at whatever level they're at. But in any case, we have cited to make sure that all receptors are less than the 50 dBA standard.
But I'm not going to tell a landowner what he can do on his own property. If one of your participants is okay with the turbine being in a particular location, and we have actual dBA or even modeled dBA at that level, I don't see a reason for us to tell a landowner he can't do that. But when we give you your guidelines to where you're going to place those turbines, yes, that is a standard we have set, and we want to see you try to avoid any of those conflicts. And so we set those conservative standards at 47, and even more so for non-participants at 45. That extra 5 dBA, try to avoid any conflicts on the land so that we don't get complaints. Because you can work with the participant, the non-participant we have to be a little bit more cautious with. You would agree with that, Ms. Brusman, right?
I would, Commissioner Tuma.
And so let's look at this particular property, okay, and I went on to the record and found receptor 849 in the sound study. It's on page 44, notified on page 49 of the map. That looks to be Mr. Hutchinson, okay, where his property is. And his modeled dBA for the GE, the highest he is 42 dBA. Is that your understanding?
Chair Tuma, yes, I'm looking at the same page of the noise report that you just noted on page PDF or page 44, and his residence is listed at 42.
And I went on to look through it, and there's quite a few receptors, as you can tell. If I'm at 849, there's a few to go through. And so I may have missed one, but my count was that there are 2 non-participants at 44, none at 45, 2 at 44, and 4 at 43. And then Mr. Hutchinson is amongst 3 that are at 42. So he is one of the more impacted non-participants, but not, as far as the modeling is concerned, not the highest impacted non-participant. Is that a fair assessment?
Commissioner Tuma, I haven't verified each of those numbers, but I would agree with you that that's right where we have noted his residence as well. He's about half a mile from, I think the nearest turbine is T61.
Yeah, I got nearest turbine is the T61 to the south about a half a mile, and I have T40, which I think is fair to say is also potential because it's upwind. I think the significance with the study that we use, the ISO 9613-2, is that it does not distinguish between up or downwind. It just basically assumes everything is downwind. And so even though I wouldn't expect the southern turbine to be as offending maybe as the ones to the north and west, because it's downwind. But as far as the modeling goes, it doesn't distinguish that. It views it as if it's that closest turbine is sitting northwest of his property from a modeling standpoint. Is that your understanding?
Commissioner Tuma, yes.
Is that your understanding, Mr. Davis?
Chair Tuma, yes.
And Mr. Hutchinson, thanks for being here. I pride myself in understanding, if you can tell, the landscape. I live in a township just like you. I'm a township owner, and I'm very concerned about what's happening in my neighborhood. I'm more concerned about the city of Northfield taking over my township than probably anything else in my life, because I don't want to pay their taxes. But yeah, I am a free rider. That the mayor, who is a good friend of mine, calls me a free rider every time I see her. So, but I understand it. I seen your property on the. Not personally. I drove to this site years ago when we did this, but I can't say that I actually drove by your property, but I saw the county records on it. You have a beautiful property. I would defend it if I were you too. Lovely deck sitting out there. I could imagine having a coffee on that beautiful kind of front porch that you got looking over the Watonwan River, which is one of my favorite rivers in the world. Ms. Brusman is kind of smirking because we had a discussion on another site about the Watonwan River. So I am familiar with where you live and what you have there. It looks like your property has a pretty set of mature trees all the way around it that should help you out. And so, but I'm looking at it, and I want to make sure you understand what I'm seeing, and I want you to be able to respond to it. I'm seeing that the permit that we have right now should be more than sufficient to protect you. If there's a problem, a complaint could be filed, and we will definitely take it seriously if there is a violation of the noise standards. I looked at, even though it's not in the record, I did look at the NORD 2000 sound study. And the literature in that area really didn't say that that's the bee's knees of all permits. Most sound permits are not designed to deal with low volume. Actually, in some ways, I saw one Dutch study that said the reason they liked the NORD 2000 was because it actually did take into account prevailing winds. And so that might actually be not in your favor if we were to use the NORD 2000, but that's not in the record. It's just something that I read that AI told me to look at on the internet. And so it doesn't really give me anything, but I could find nothing in the literature that said we should have used the NORD 2000 as a model. And then given all the conservative factors we put around the modeling, I'm not overly concerned with this being a possible violation of our noise standards. But we're always surprised. Mr. Davis, you've seen the hundreds of these, and you've seen many, and sometimes we get surprised. But as we sit here, if there is a noise standard violation, you would come to us and take Mr. Hutchinson's complaint seriously under our existing permit, and we would do an investigation. And so if he has a problem, you and Mr. Panay would take that up and take it seriously. Is that my understanding, Mr. Davis?
Chair Tuma, that's correct.
And as you look at this, I mean, if he has a property that is surrounded by some good mature trees, and he's at 42 dBA, 8 below the state standard, I guess I would be surprised, but I want to confirm with you because you've seen more than these than I have. Would you be surprised that he's going to end up in violation of the state noise, or I should say Ms. Brusman's client would be in violation of the state noise standard at a property like that? I would be surprised, but I guess I wanted to hear your assessment.
Chair Tuma, I would be very surprised if it exceeded 50 for a significant amount of time that it would violate.
And Mr. Hutchinson, the county has indicated to us what they think are appropriate setbacks. Your property is significantly far enough away that it does not violate any of the county setback standards. So as I look at this, as I sit here today, and like I said, my colleagues to the next to me have not heard this, my assessment is I think our permit conditions should protect you sufficiently at this time that I don't see a need to make any adjustments to the permit in regards to your property or the noise standard. So that's the way I see it right now, but I want to give you a fair opportunity to respond and tell me where I'm wrong and what you're seeing. And like I said, I appreciate what you're going through. You have a beautiful piece of property there. I would defend it aggressively if I were in your situation too. But I just wanted to assure you that we are seeing it, and we will definitely, if there is a complaint on the noise standard, take it seriously. So, Mr. Hutchinson, this is your chance to give us your thoughts. And you're on mute if you're talking to us.
You got me now?
I got you now.
Okay, thank you for running through all that information. I appreciate the overview of everything. I'd like to just point out a couple of issues that I've got with what was said. Starting with the noise projection standards, and I addressed this in my letter, but while the ISO 9613 is the accepted standard for predicting these noise levels, there have been numerous examples where post-construction sound monitoring has shown that predictions can be off by 5 decibels or more, especially at low frequencies. For instance, freeborn wind, there were multiple instances of being off by 5 decibels. So if we're looking at homes that are currently predicted to be 45 or 47 decibels, that'll put them over the 50 if the predictions are wrong, which history has shown that they could be. That's my issue with that. From freeborn wind, I will admit that there was a change in the modeling that added that 2 decibels, and you referenced that. But 2 decibels doesn't cover that the problem that showed up in freeborn being off by 5 decibels. So there's still at least a 3 decibel threshold that's not covered at all. And then finally, I would add to that, you mentioned the beautiful, good, mature trees covering my property, and they cover properties all around the county. But I wrote about that in my letter, stating that those mature trees are dead. All across the county, all across this region, we're dealing with trees that have all been killed in the last couple of years. It's an environmental change that at this point has been ignored. So I mean, it was response to my letter that was downplayed, saying, well, trees aren't really counted at all. But they do have a negative effect on the sound at some extent. And you're referencing it, you're trying to justify my property is protected by those trees, but those trees are gone. I mean, they're standing right now, but they're gone. They're dead. They're coming down. And this is happening to other residents in the area. It's not just me. So my contention is this. The ISO 9613 modeling has proven itself not to be accurate. In fact, it was designed, and your experts will attest to this, it was designed for sound sources that start at ground level. It was never designed for wind turbines, even though it has been used for that. That's not the way it was designed and accepted. The higher you elevate this sound level, the worse the prediction model works. And then the final thing I would add is with the sound levels, we're still talking about the mid-range of what's accepted for sounds, right? So at 47 decibels, that's the sound level we should experience half the time. So 50% of the time or thereabouts, the sound could very well be louder. And those louder sounds are most likely to occur in the evening when you've got different air speeds at higher elevation and you've got temperature inversions. So they're going to be louder at night. On a cool evening where people are out enjoying their time or they're going to bed with the window open. So I would say the conservative thing to do would be to do a new noise prediction using a more reliable predictor, because this ISO 9613 has proven itself not to be effective. And in addition, then, there have been environmental changes that I referenced with the death in trees. And in 10 years of time since the environmental study, 9 years has been done, like eagle populations started their studies back in 2017. Well, those studies are 9 years old. And the study itself referenced the fact that eagle populations are continually expanding and growing. So we don't know right now what the eagle population is there today, because it's an old study. So those two things stand out to me currently as being issues. It's an old environmental study, and it's a faulty noise modeling monitor.
Thank you,
I'll say one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I say one more thing?
Yep, absolutely.
You referenced the setback waivers for these 4 or 5 turbines that were moved that you approved a couple of years ago. And Big Bend can certainly attest to the fact that they now have signed agreements from all but one of those landowners. But those signed agreements come at a point where the landowners gave up. You had already made a ruling saying, it doesn't matter what the landowner says, we're going to build a turbine. So at that point, if Big Bend comes back and said, well, will you sign an agreement? Their choice is the turbine is going to be built and I get no compensation, or I can finally sign this agreement, nothing else changes, but I at least get a few bucks from Big Bend. That's where those landowners were at. So they were coerced into signing the agreement, I would say.
Okay. Any further questions of the permittee or Mr. Hutchinson? Go ahead.
I guess
Mr. Sullivan.
I would ask the permittee, can you, Mr. Hutchinson makes the claim that the assessment is 9 years old and is no longer relevant. Can you respond to that?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Sullivan, yes, as part of our amendment, we went section by section through the application and looked at information that had been provided in the original application and what was reviewed as part of the original permit decision and what may have changed. And so section by section, we went through and noted where there were no changes and where there were. And so that's why you see an updated sound study. And that's why you see updated correspondence on wildlife and other issues, because we did go back and do a refresh where there was the opportunity for things to have changed. But again, the turbine locations have not. And really the impacts, the change in facilities were very minor and actually intended to reduce impacts from the originally permitted site. So you have in your record before you the permit application, which goes, the amendment application, which goes section by section through the impacts that you reviewed the first time and provides and calls out any areas where there were changes.
And then could you also respond, I mean, Emerald Ash Borer is decimating trees throughout the state. Can you also respond to the point that the trees are dead and that the noise levels are not relevant because of the trees, the situation with the, that the trees are not going to be there to protect them?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Sullivan, Mr. Davis pointed out in the briefing papers as well, but the way that the sound modeling is done does not assume the trees are there. So it also conservatively did not count on the trees to reduce noise levels. And so whether they are there or not, the model levels should be accurate as they are presented here, because they did not count on the trees being present. So whether they're there and or coming down wouldn't impact the modeling.
Okay, thank you.
But it would impact the potential for mitigations that we see. We know the model is not perfect, okay? That's why we put those conservative elements in there. And so the lack of trees could be a signal, okay, that we may have more complaints, you know, say against another properties on other sites that we have. I mean, it's just, it is a concern, but the conservative models that the modeling parameters we put should still take that into account, and we should still be in a safe territory because we built a lot of these facilities where there are no trees, and so we're kind of familiar with kind of what's going on and the impacts that could happen to landowners. But it's fair to say a lack of trees will potentially mean maybe more complaints.
Chair Tuma, that is possible, but again, we think we've conservatively built the model to not rely on those trees as a mitigation measure.
Right. Could you, sorry, Commissioner Hom, if you want to go, I was just going to ask about trees.
It'll be a little bit outside this time.
Okay, so I don't recall if the permit, what the permit calls for as far as tree replacement or mitigations around trees. Could you speak to that?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Sullivan, we don't anticipate any tree removal for the wind project. Again, they're sited largely in the middle of farm fields, and we wouldn't anticipate any tree removal related to the construction of the project.
Could there be mitigations where, you know, trees could be used, you know, for visual mitigations or?
Commissioner Tuma and Commissioner Sullivan, we wouldn't anticipate that for visual impacts for the wind project. The more likely mitigation, if there were to be a complaint and the measurement shows that the turbine sound is higher than the state noise standard, what would be more typical would be the modifications to the way the turbines are operated. Commissioner Tuma mentions a little bit of that. One of them is called NRO mode, or noise reduction operating mode, I think is the acronym. And so it's actually a modification to how the turbines are operated to keep the sound levels lower if, in fact, in practice, there's an issue down the road.
But you could develop a good neighbor agreement with a farmer who may be, or a neighbor who may be impacted. And it might be hey, you don't have to run it less if you grow some nice, beautiful fir trees in my backyard.
Commissioner Tuma, that's certainly an option, but I think the way that at least Commission has typically enforced the noise standard is to make sure that the actual monitored noise levels are below the state standard, and so it would most likely result in changes in the operation of the turbines. But certainly we'd work with
That's if it got
landowners.
here as a complaint. That's what we would do. But you can still work with, we expect you, Ms. Anderson, to be working with non-participants. I think you've been doing that, and you will continue to do that. Is my understanding that you will do that, and maybe will never come back to us if there's a problem. Is that your understanding, Ms. Anderson?
Chair Tuma, that's correct. We intend to be a good community partner in this community over the life of the project.
That's like Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Tuma. So it's a little bit off from the direct discussion about the permitting, but I'd like to discuss overall potential community benefit issue. Who is off-taker of this power plant? So who's buying this energy?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Hom, Great River Energy is the off-taker for power from Big Bend Wind, and that was the notice of that was filed in this docket back in January.
Yes,
last year.
I reviewed the most recent quarterly updates, so that was updated in there. So in that case, I think Great River Energy is a generation transmission company providing energy to the local distribution co-ops. And so some of these Cotton County distribution co-op utility is getting energy from Great River Energy. So given that this low cost and predictable price energy will be provided to the local, right?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Hom, yes, in the way that electrons go everywhere, but yes, you're right. With a local utility as the off-taker, we would expect local benefits to the community.
And in addition to that, if they have more than they needed, this energy will be sold to outside their service area or even outside the state. And that revenue, 100% of that revenue will go back to the Great River Energy customer, which is a distribution co-op. And in turn, that distribution co-ops their shareholder is a local consumer who's using their electricity. So their benefit will be reflected in their final bill, right?
Commissioner Tuma and Commissioner Hom, I can't speak for Great River Energy on this particular docket, but that would be my general understanding of how that would work.
Because the co-op ownership is owned by members, so there's no Wall Street people taking advantage of it. This is fully owned by local people who's being served by these co-ops. So the benefit will be 100% borne by everybody, whoever is being served.
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Hom, I would agree with you.
So in addition to that one, if generally the price, electricity price, wholesale electricity price around there will benefit even if they are not being served by GRE, because at time the other electricity provider is buying energy from the wholesale market, they will pay only that low price, because typically this wind will bring down wholesale price to close to zero or even negative based on their tax credit status. Sometimes they are paid to consume, means at the negative price. So whoever's taking energy will be paid to take the energy. So that means I think not only the Great River Energy members, the non-member will potentially get the benefit from this project.
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Hom, I'd agree. And I think in some of your recent filings and other dockets around projects that could be accelerated for the benefit of making sure that we're capturing the tax credits, Big Bend was one of those that was identified. And certainly this amendment that's before you today and a number of the other steps, including, as Ms. Anderson mentioned, our desire to start project construction on the substation here in March, are all things that are aligned to make sure we capture those benefits for the Minnesota community.
Okay, thank you. Final question. So recently you changed your point of interconnection and then you drop out from MISO queue, but now you are utilizing your off-taker, Great River Energy, their substation, to take this energy under MISO special rule so they can expedite this interconnection. So this is a very viable project. It has an off-taker. It has no concern with the queue process at the MISO, right?
Chair Tuma and Commissioner Hom, that's correct. As I mentioned, we plan to start construction of the project substation in March, full construction of the project September 1st, but part of that was facilitated by, excuse me, that interconnection with Great River Energy that's viable and ready to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Maybe I misunderstood. Is this an ARROS project?
No, this is a surplus interconnection.
Oh, surplus,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
GRE on that substation.
Mr. Hutchinson, I promised you a last say, so I don't know if you have anything to add after those series of questions. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to give your say. Mr. Hutchinson, you're on mute if you're live now, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just a couple of quick notes from what I just heard. I understand that the modeling does not take trees into account, as was stated, but I go back to the fact that the modeling has not worked. And having the trees there at least makes it a little bit more likely that it will work in the situation of residents who all used to have mature trees. But this just makes it that much less likely that the model will work, and will keep it under that 50 decibel level. Then finally, I love the cost of lower or free energy, as was talked about, but I'm sure you understand that whether you look at a local, state, or even a country level, history has shown that the more green energy we produce, whether that's solar or wind, the electricity prices actually go up, because all those sources need to be backed up by another power source, because they're not always there. So yeah, we're going to get a 300 megawatt capacity, right, wind farm, but Big Bend will tell you that the likelihood is it'll produce about 100 megawatts because it operates 30 to 40% of the time. So when it's not operating, we still need to depend on coal and natural gas or some other source. So our cost actually ends up going up. That's what the history tells us. If you've got a way to promise something different, I'd really like to hear it. But history shows the cost only goes up.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll go into to discussions. Be honest with you, I was comfortable on the record. Mr. Hutchinson, one of the 44s, I might have suggested to you to put a monitor by his property, and you certainly could still do that if you feel a need to as you do the actual noise monitoring post construction. I'll leave that up to you because I certainly don't want to sit here and order it and leapfrog over those who have modeled at 44 and 43. So I'm comfortable with the amendment. I think it is in the right place. Mr. Hutchinson, if I were in a situation to have good debate about you, whether our present structure that we're building out is going to be cheaper, I would, but that's really not the issue in front of us. Your neighbors, Mr. McCall, who has S Creek Curve LLC, wants to partner with Miss Anderson's client to build turbines and to diversify his income. And the Cottonwood and Midway are open to this and willing to do that. And then I think the applicant has showed that they're working closely with the community and the impacted folks on this. So I think there's no really anything in my mind to indicate that we need to make any significant changes other than that requested by the applicant. I understand, Ms. Brusman, is a decision option just 1 or 1 and 2? I'm trying to recall my brain, and I didn't do circles when I should have.
Chair Tuma, just decision option 1 from the staff.
Sounds good. Mr. Davis, am I missing anything?
Chair Tuma, no.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion signify. Oh, wait. Sorry.
That's okay.
Commissioner Partridge.
I have to say one thing. So first of all, I agree with you, Mr. Hutchinson. I am sympathetic to your situation. We don't make these decisions easily. We don't wish to put any burden or impact on anyone. However, we really need energy resources, and so we work with the applicants to try to do everything we can as a commission and ensure that they're doing everything that they can as developers to minimize impacts to residents. And I do not want to take this opportunity to get into a back and forth with any member of the public, but I do want to correct the record to state that there are numerous, in fact, I would almost say countless studies that have shown that renewable energy has put downward pressure and has decreased the cost of electricity we would see otherwise. I am very sympathetic, and I think all of us are very concerned about how the cost of electricity is increasing. And we have seen a lot of that being driven by increased costs of natural gas, increased costs of components, and other areas of inflation. We still see that wind is the least cost resource when you look across all of the options that we have. And so I just can't let that go on an official record that we are not acknowledging, and I do not agree that renewables have caused an increase to our electricity prices. And I think that this is the most prudent investment we can make as a state and as a region. And I have nothing else. I support the motion.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner Partridge. And I think it's fair to say wind and solar do need a partner, and we know that. That's why we're aggressively looking at other options like batteries, and we're building a gas plant down in southwest Minnesota because of that. And the environmental groups in Minnesota have consented to that in a lot of the filings. And so we recognize that there's a partnership with natural gas or other resources that are, what we call, more on-demand resources to partner with it. And so we're not blind to that reality. And it's that partnership, though, beats the old system, and hands down, at least it's been showing that. And so we appreciate the applicant coming and putting a good project in front of us and trying to find a way to work with landowners. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have a comment or you ready to vote?
I just wanted to, I appreciate Commissioner Partridge you saying that, and I appreciate Commissioner Tuma the follow-up. And I guess one point that, Mr. Hutchinson, you made that I just want to respond to directly is you the reference that wind and solar need to be backed up. Every power plant needs to be backed up. That's the nuclear power plants that the state have, Monticello and Prairie Island, need to be backed up. And occasionally they trip off and nobody notices. And that's because there's about 8,000 power plants in the MISO footprint that back them up. So every power plant is backed up. And so what the history shows, what the engineering shows, is that it's the network that backs up individual power plants. So.
Commissioner Hom, I thought I was going to get right to that vote, but I'm losing my touch, I guess. Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Tuma. I also have to recognize our commission staff's expertise. I think I respect our commission staff's expertise, and then we have to, in the process, our staff recommend that based on their experience and knowledge, and then their engineering information. Even if there is some miss due to any engineering study has some potential error and margin of uncertainty. I strongly believe in applicants' economic incentive to make sure mitigate with the landowner rather than they shutting down the turbine. Because they have to produce energy to get the money, so they will work with the landowner if there's any potential problem that Mr. Hutchinson worried about, the modeling is not properly capturing. That can be possible anytime, but I strongly believe the applicant's economic interest, they will try to fix that to make sure the landowner is not being harmed. So that's why I can support the motion.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I probably should have stated this earlier. I think knowing what I know and knowing have worked in this area for a while, if I were a landowner in the Big Bend, I would be pretty pleased to know that I have two more senior staff with Mr. Davis and Mr. Penne as our senior staff on this. These guys have been around the block a few times, and so there's nothing much that the applicant's going to do to buffalo them. And I see Ms. Anderson nodding yes. So I think you're in good hands. And if you have any concerns or complaints, we will take them seriously. I get a little nervous if you compare us to Freeborn Wind. I can assure you that that is probably an anomaly in all of the processes we had, but I appreciate the concern and your diving into trying to protect your neighborhood and your community. I would have done the same in that situation. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. There being no further business on this agenda in front of us today, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our
Good job.
Freeloader.
And that my former mayor, she actually lost the last election.